forcing the judges to be paying attention to glute position, feet position, elbow position, head position, pausing, like up, down, all at the same time is impossible. It is not possible to even for 3 judges, to pay attention to all of these variables. Today, we're taking a deep look into the new and improved bench press rules, which is the most recent rule change in the IPF. This rule has been frustrating the majority of the powerlifting community. I recently made a post about the 2023 IPF Bench Press Championships where the judges were overruling successful bench press attempts. In a typical powerlifting competition, when all 3 judges or 2 out of 3 judges give you a white light, your lift is successful. And at international competitions, if a coach from another team or the same team wants the jury to take a look at these lifts to overrule them, they have to exchange money and the jury has to be convinced that it's worth looking at. Prior to this bench press change, where there's now elbow depth involved in the equation, that is how judges would overrule squats when coaches thought that an athlete's squat depth wasn't sufficient. However, at the recent 2023 Bench Press Championships, the jury was reviewing the lifts on their own and overruling lifts without any provocation from other coaches. As I predicted, this rule change is slowing down the competition and frustrating lifters around the world. To me and the other 5% of athletes worldwide affected by this rule directly, and for those who spend a significant amount of their free time in the gym working to express the most robust and strongest versions of themselves on the platform, the enjoyment of powerlifting is getting stripped away. If you look at the comment section of the post, about 95% of people agreed that the new bench press rules are, I hate to say this, but hot garbage. However, about 5% of all people who are unaffected by the rule change told me to stop complaining, get used to it, and simply force my athletes to adapt to this rule change. People would say comments like, just tell them to narrow their grip, tuck their elbows, flare their elbows, reduce their arch, and they'll easily increase their elbow depth. Many people thought that this would be a non-problem. But is it really that simple? Today, I will do everything that I can to debunk these statements as I uncover the complexity of increasing elbow depth to meet the new IPF standards for the competition bench press. If you're still watching this and you have no clue what I'm talking about with the bench press rule changes, then make sure to watch my video where I go in depth about everything that you need to know about the bench press rule change. So prior to this bench press rule change, there were a lot of things for judges to pay attention to, and most people found this to be fair. However, some athletes were able to exploit their own biomechanics to experience a significant advantage over other athletes, and the IPF didn't like that. So to level the playing field, the IPF decided that in 2023, that in addition to all of those rules, the elbows must go below the top of the shoulder joint during the bench press. However, this change had an unintended consequence. Some lifters, like my athlete Michaela, are physically unable to achieve this new elbow depth, no matter what grip they use or other suggestion provided by other athletes who are not affected by this lift. And that's where things get tricky. We've all seen those comments suggesting that it's super simple to increase elbow depth with just a few quick fixes. But today, we're putting those claims to the test. We'll try out some of the most common suggestions and some of these strategies that I've already implemented with my athletes to measure their impact on elbow depth. So let's dive in. I'm going to use myself as an example. I want to experiment with a few of these strategies to see how much I can increase my elbow depth when implementing these strategies, and will my bench press even pass an IPF judge? One common suggestion is to simply widen your grip on the bar. So let's start out with my normal grip, and then I'll widen my grip and see if that increases my elbow depth at all. So with my normal bench depth, I was easily passing the stated objectives of the new IPF bench rule. And when I widened my grip, from my perspective, my depth didn't increase much. And again, the point of this video isn't to test whether or not I pass, but to test how those who are impacted, how much more depth they could achieve by modifying their own bench press. So what we're looking at is the difference in the elbow position on implementing these variations. To keep things consistent for both of those attempts, I maximized my arch and my leg drive. So I wasn't cheating by artificially deflating my arch. That is a suggestion that we'll implement next in a moment, but first we're gonna try a close grip variation and see how that impacts my bench depth. Again, the closer grip, it didn't feel like my elbows went deeper. And one of the contradictions that you probably already noticed is that one of the strategies that we'll have to implement now is less leg drive and less arch so that there is a lower touch point. Is that really what we want from bench pressing? Do we want athletes to be artificially reducing how much force they can produce and create less stable positions? Because that's what I'm about to do with the close grip, my normal comp grip, and my wide grip. Less arch, less leg drive. If I can't fix my elbow depth or increase my depth by at least an inch, then there's only one more strategy that I can try, and we'll talk about that in a second. I think I've just tried every permutation that I've ever thought of about benching, and I have some thoughts. All of the solutions that appeared to increase my elbow depth felt incredibly uncomfortable and risky. Meaning I only have 70 kilos on the bar, and with wide grip, no arch, locking out only three repetitions, even though I have about 30 reps of pressing and I'm pausing for longer than normal, it was still incredibly challenging. My best bench is 155 kilos. So if the point of these rule changes is to help level the playing field, what seemed like the only options that increase my elbow depth to any significant degree, and if you're a lifter affected by this rule, you would likely need to implement a significant change to your bench press, you have to accept that you will not be able to press as much weight. And it seems counterintuitive. Like, no other sport do we have rules that are targeting very specific players. Sure, in the NBA, you could only stand in the paint for 3 seconds, but they didn't prevent you from dunking just because you're 7'2". They just made it so that you couldn't stand in the paint because that's kind of boring. But forcing the judges to be paying attention to glute position, feet position, elbow position, head position, pausing, like up, down, all at the same time is impossible. It is not possible to even for 3 judges, to pay attention to all of these variables. And so you're putting the onus on the judges at the jury table, which are only things at international competitions. So lifters from around the world are having inconsistent judging because they're not used to having a jury table, and also because it's nearly impossible to judge this from a neutral position. From the front, you have a better angle, but from the sides, you can't really see the elbow position in relation to their shoulder joint. Another thing, it puts the onus on the lifter to completely change how they express their strength just to fit into this weird narrative that, again, was not agreed upon for any member nations. So what do you think? Did I find a strategy that's satisfactory? Were these bench press changes viable? I mean, if I had to modify my bench press, I would be really uncomfortable making the changes that I did today. Sure, eventually I would develop increased strength with those new positions, but in the back of my head, I'd always know that they're biomechanically inefficient. You're taking away stability from the shoulder joint, and with less stability, you have less force production. And we want to be strong. Like, it's okay that some lifters have stronger lifts than others because of their own biomechanical differences. And I'm not upset when someone can pull sumo with 5 inches of range of motion when my range of motion is like 20 inches. I don't know. But I'm okay with that because I'm doing the best that I can. And if someone is born in a different way and they can express strength in a more efficient way according to these rules, then that's great. But to force someone to change their biomechanics and artificially, like intentionally limit their strength potential, and then also increase their potential injury risk at high intensities if you have low stability and you're pushing your body past what's comfortable, usually good things don't happen, especially with a lot of stress over time. So to conclude this video, personally, my position hasn't changed, but let me know if your position has changed. And if you're a lifter impacted by this, and you're confused about what to do, and you're stressed about what to do, contact the head of your nation's organization and express to them the struggle that you're experiencing, and perhaps link this video, because so far, the only people that I've seen discuss how simple this rule change is are people that aren't affected by the rule change. And that's not cool. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to press the like button, press the like button, and then subscribe. Share it with your friends, and shout out to Tyson for managing to do B-roll all around this very tight, controlled space. And let me know what kind of videos you want to see next.